Oh, hello there. Yes, well, I hope you're working hard. It's important. Yes. Yesterday, this particular thing caught my eye in the Daily Telegraph. Oh, older workers urged to delay retirement to save economy. Do they mean us? Yeah. UK slowdown can be reversed if bigger share of over 60s stay in work, says the OECD, who, as we well know, are never wrong, unless they are wrong, in which case we don't agree with them. Yes, which would be good, won't it? So, yes, I mean, I already basically do work full time. I know you get the impression here that I don't do anything, and as a teacher, inevitably I don't, but basically I do work full time. So, yeah, I can just work for longer at exactly the same rate. I mean, being um, being a 0 hours contract worker, my pay basically has gone down over the last few years, as indeed has so many other people's, because wages are at best flat in the UK. Still, never mind, we can just get older people to plug the gaps. After all, there are loads of them, aren't there? There aren't any problems with that. No, you're right, you can't see any problems with that. But if you read the Telegraph article, you might find a few. So, improving job quality can be an important aspect to better retention of older workers in the labour market, the OECD said. Really? Good grief. So, in other words, sort of, having a nicer place to work is a plus, is it? I would never have thought that. Anyway, the report cites studies showing that older workers put a higher premium on autonomy and flexible work practices than their younger colleagues. Older workers are also more likely to quit the workforce if their job involves high physical demands such as heavy lifting, awkward postures, or fast work pace. Yeah. We ain't going to work in Amazon warehouses, are we? We're just not going to do it. No. Britain's other challenge is that people are less likely to work in the 60s if they did not work or worked only intermittently in their 50s. Yes, perhaps because of health reasons. Anyway, at 55, a quarter of Britons are not in employment, according to analysis by the Centre for Ageing Better. That drops to more than a third by age 60 and more than half by 64. At state pension age of 66, only 30% remain in work. Yes, I do have the feeling that might well be me. But the thing about that that got me thinking was, fine, let's improve workplace conditions for people, shall we? It's not going to happen, is it? We don't live in that type of economy. We live in an economy that for 45 years has decided to make workplace conditions for people worse because that improves profitability. After all, that'll make us all richer, won't it, with that trickle-down stuff, yes. And of course, pay has remained static because we decided, in our infinite wisdom after the 2008 financial crash, that we would just not buy anything at all, ever. Yeah, that was austerity, wasn't it? Which was only supposed to last for about 3 years, but oddly we're still here. Quite a bit later, yes. So there's no point in spending any money on those kind of social welfare or safety nets for people. And, well, I'm sure that won't end up costing us a great deal of money in the long run. Except, of course, it has. All of those indices that you can look at show that. So we as a country are a lot richer, and as a country are richer. The rich are a lot richer, the very, very rich are very, very much richer, and the very, very, very rich are enormously richer. Meanwhile, the rest of us can go to hell, can't we? Now, you would have thought that that would have involved, in the British media, a reasonable discussion about that as an issue, about where we've ended up after 45 years of basic Thatcherism followed by some chronic austerity. But no, of course not. The reason we're given for all this happening is immigration. And the reason why we're given that, as the reason why we're here, is because the British media is owned by the very rich, British politics is owned by the very, very rich, and they don't want possibly to give up a penny. So we end up with things like this. It caught my eye again yesterday on GB News. The fact is we don't have enough money. Some kids just fidget. Some don't behave properly. Journalist Claire Malone reacts to reports diagnosis of autism have tripled in schools and risks bankrupting UK councils. Yes. You see, I, as a, with my sociology head on this, has to say, well, why is that? And the answer is, well, kids just fidget, but everybody just wants them to be a victim these days. And they say to kids, oh, you're victims, and the kids act like victims, and therefore we have to spend a lot more money on them. Except, of course, I'm sorry, but that isn't the way that it works. It actually takes about 3 to 4 years to get a diagnosis of autism because we don't actually spend any money on the services that diagnose those things. And in relation to special needs education, we have to say, realistically, why is it that so many more kids are so much more vulnerable than they used to be? Could it be linked to the enormously skyrocketing levels of poverty amongst children? To which presumably Claire Malone would go, no, they're just naughty. Yeah. We can think about everything else. There's been a current reasoning about, we can't have jury trials. Well, I'm sorry, but I seem to recall for the last 15 years, the Conservative government basically gutted the whole of the criminal justice system. They didn't want to spend any money on cops. They didn't want to spend any money on courts. They decided very famously and superbly to privatise the probation service, the prison service. They didn't want to spend any money on that either, which leads us neatly here. But we mustn't have a sensible discussion about these things. We've got to find somebody to blame. And that brings me to my wonderful piece for today, which is Alison Pearson with this, which I thought was quite an astounding piece. And I don't know, I don't really like to sort of suggest that some people might want to be visited by violence, but it's really incredible. And Britain's craven appeasement of Islam is an insult to the victims of 7/7. Multiculturalism, open borders, and a terror of offending the Muslim communities make another attack inevitable. Except, I'm sorry, but we haven't realistically had Muslim bombs in this country for quite a long period of time. We've had a reasonable level of kind of nutters with knives attacks, etc. But we haven't exactly had bombs since then because, we haven't. Now, you can argue the toss about that. I don't really care. But what Alison is doing here, like the rest of the right-wing commentariat, is suggesting that all of our problems might well be solved if we just got rid of the brown people. You might think Rupert Lowe with his, we'll just deport 2 million people. Okay then, I'm sure that'll work. In terms of getting people back into the workforce, I'm sure that'll work because of course when we've deported those 2 million people, which apparently is a really simple exercise that will only take about 5 minutes and won't cost anything, then there'll be loads of high-paying jobs because there won't be enough people in the workforce. Except our any basic understanding of that theory for about the last 10 years, Brexit was going to do that, tells you that won't be the case. There is no way that British capital will improve people's wages and working conditions. So you can wave goodbye to people like me if we get too hacked off enough. Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we retire in our 60s? After all, the media, the Daily Telegraph itself, is always full of success stories of people, who made something in the city, all those brilliant financial jobs that, we were all going to live off under Thatcherism. We didn't have to worry about industry or anything else. We were simply going to sell insurance to the world. Yeah, all of those jobs. We can retire at 50 because we've made our fortune. Yes. And of course, having made our fortune, we're not going to be taxed on it. How dare the government do that? How dare we make things collectively within a society and then decide to share them out unequally? And this is where everything is going. And that's why those more virulent and sort of crypto-fascist voices are out there. They can live within this environment because people like Alison give them a great deal of cover. Now, the real problem I have with her particular stance on 7/7 is that she takes great delight in slagging off people like me that work in the public services, in particular the emergency services on that day, which I found very, very distasteful. You can always criticise people like Alison does, but I might suggest to Alison that she gets off her sofa in her slippers, maybe even outside of, Armistice Day, and does something. As ever, loads of people think that I have a very, very easy life, but actually I'm an SEN teacher. I deal with kids in enormously difficult circumstances and have to tread my way through that using all the skill that I have from about 25 years of work. And you're welcome to give it a go if you want, but you wouldn't last long. Still, I can just work harder for more, because we mustn't, whatever we do, have a discussion about how to properly fix things in this country. We can just blame the brown people. And when that doesn't work, because it won't, they'll find another scapegoat. And it'll be all those people like me that are being lined up for it. Those fellow travellers, the dodgy communists. That'll be the one. And that won't work either. Still, at least we won't have taxed anyone's wealth, which is the vital part of this. Do have a glorious and lovely and glorious and probably quite good. It's dangerously close to what we might think of as, well, dear God, the weekend. Is it? Possibly. We're kind of getting there, aren't we? Anyway, enjoy.